Pavan es asesor especial y líder de la Iniciativa de Economía Verde de la UNEP, un proyecto para demostrar que la economía verde no retiene el crecimiento, sino por el contrario, es el nuevo motor para el progreso económico, desarrollo del empleo y la reducción de la persistente pobreza, buscando el desarrollo sostenible a través del correcto aprovechamiento de los recursos naturales. Después de una larga y exitosa carrera como banquero, Pavan decidió tomarse un tiempo para llevar a cabo sus proyectos ambientalistas. Gracias a esto, nace TIB, The Economics of Ecosystems and Biodiversity. Ahora busca intereses sostenibles a largo plazo en economía ambiental.
The green economy is not a new concept. In fact, many years ago in 1989, Professor David Pearce and Professor Ed Barbier wrote something called Blueprint for a Green Economy. And the idea was that by investing in new technology to save energy, to reduce materials use, and to convert from fossil fuel usage to renewable use, you could actually improve economic output, economic performance. And they were questioning this assumption that people always make, that somehow by going green, you are reducing economic growth, you are creating unemployment, or you are adding poverty.
And they think they're losing money.
Or losing money, as the case may be, yeah. So this was the genesis of the green economy. But after that, and since then, a lot of more work has been done. And I guess our project on the green economy has made it more clear what exactly is a green economy.
How have you changed that concept, and what is its goal right now?
Today, we see the green economy, frankly, as the only kind of economy that can deliver sustainable development and that can really solve the problem of persistent poverty. And we see also the green economy as the only kind of economy that can manage to do all this at the same time reducing ecological scarcities and reducing environmental risks. So basically it means it's the only economy for the future. We cannot have anything else. Unfortunately, today there is still too much invested in the brown economy, and that's why the change is taking so much time.
What is brown economy?
The brown economy is the opposite of the green economy. The brown economy is one which does not deliver to the whole of society, creates problems of poverty, adds to environmental risks like climate change, increases ecological scarcities like fresh water and nutrients and soil fertility and so on. So it does all of the opposite things.
How do you go about green economy concept reaching the policymakers?
I'd say in terms of reaching the policymakers, I think we've reached more than we haven't. So that's good news. So I would say 60-40 have understood that yes, there is an alternative. But there are some countries which are taking it really fast, like South Korea, China, and there are some sectors where you are seeing huge explosions of green economy ideas. You're seeing, for instance, in agriculture, people are picking up the concept. You're seeing that in forestry, you're seeing that in renewable energy. There are some sectors in business which are, if you like, embracing a green economy much faster than the other sectors.
Are more developed countries getting the concept, grasping the concept more rapidly than developing countries?
I would say the first movers in some cases like Germany and Europe were developed countries. But today, the fastest progress is in the developing world. Actually, I'm seeing progress in China, in India. I'm seeing amazing stories coming. Uganda for organic growth, organic agriculture growth. The best example for solar photovoltaic is actually Bangladesh. So, you know, some of the best examples that I have with me today are in developing countries.
Can you explain to us the Bangladesh example?
Sure. In Bangladesh, there's a company called Grameen Shakti. Grameen Shakti is basically a subsidiary of the Grameen Bank, which is a microfinance bank in Bangladesh. And what they do is they purchase solar panels and sell them to housewives, who then pay for them by connecting up electricity to their neighbors. So the housewife in Bangladesh, in the village, becomes like a mini electricity company. And she's charging the money to her neighbors so that they can pay her and then she can pay back the loan from the bank. And the panel is very simple. It's like about this big. And it provides enough electricity for 1 or 2 light bulbs in her home and 1 or 2 light bulbs in her neighbors' homes. So the good news in this case is that this model works. There are already 400,000 homes in Bangladesh, in villages, which are using solar photovoltaic. And this is much better than kerosene. Now, kerosene is a very damaging fuel because, as you know, you breathe the fumes of kerosene lamps, you can result in problems with chest infections and bronchial problems, and essentially a health problem has been converted into a green economy opportunity.
So that actually busts the myth that it can be too costly to implement.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the reality is that if you have the right enabling conditions, in this case, microfinance is the enabling conditions. If you have the microfinance available to the poor family, clearly there is an economic model which is commercially viable. The banks are lending money against this, so it works.
How does one go about putting numbers to the resources? How do you go about accounting those resources?
Well, I've always said that if you cannot measure it, then you will not manage it. And this is the same thing applies for nature. What you do not measure, you will not manage. And part of the problem of measurement with nature is that what nature provides us, clean air, fresh water, the ability to go out and enjoy yourself in a national park, bees and insects to pollinate your crops and your fruits, all these things are free. Nature does not send you invoices for pollination, and it does not send you invoices for clean air. I wish it would change things. But because it doesn't, it's free. And because it's free, you don't account for it and you don't measure it. And because you don't measure it, then you end up making decisions where you lose what is valuable but doesn't have a price.
Okay, once you have the prices on the resources, what's next? What do you do? What does the government do with that?
We should start measuring the production of nature just like we measure the production of factories. If bees are producing pollination, it's got a value. It's been estimated at $190 billion per annum. Well, we should reflect that value in the accounts of society. Today, the accounts of society, the so-called GDP accounts, PIB in French, these accounts do not include natural production. And also, because they don't include natural production, if you lose nature, in other words, if you lose a watershed or if you lose a forest, you don't account for the loss.
How do you account for those resources? And what is the table of reference of them?
If, for instance, let's take an example. If you're a rich man with lots of money in the bank account, if you lock it up in a current account, you will earn 0% interest. But if you invest it in something that generates values and incomes, then you will earn incomes. So this is what we are saying, that you should start accounting for the wealth of nature that belongs to Peru or that belongs to any country at the national level. And so that you can see that how much is the impact of forests on freshwater capture, how much is the impact of forests on biodiversity and from that ecotourism, right? So if you start accounting for these assets and for the incomes that they generate, you will have a means of measuring and then managing those assets. Today we don't measure it, we don't manage it. I've myself done this kind of work for India, my country. I'm from India. And we found that data was there, but people were not using it. For instance, there was data which connected flood losses and calculated flood losses, and we had to connect it to deforestation by doing an analysis. So sometimes you have to do calculations, modeling, analysis, but mostly countries do have data. And they're not using it because they're not thinking in terms of what's free. They're thinking in terms of factories and manufacture. Today, if you go back 2 years ago, remember there was about $2.5 trillion of money that was injected into the economy by all of the G20 governments collectively in order to restart or to kickstart the old economy because of the recession. The sad thing is that most of that was in brown investment, not green investment, right? And that's Keynesianism. But my point is that you can also apply ecological Keynesianism. You can apply Keynesianism by paying people, like India does, to replant forests or to build small dams in villages so that the water is captured and so on. So you can also pay people to build natural infrastructure instead of just built infrastructure. Today, a bridge is useful, a motorway is useful, a railroad is useful. It's useful because it adds wealth to society. Likewise, a forest is useful, a lake is useful. So if you are improving the water capture in a lake or a wetland, or if you are increasing the density of a forest, that means in the case of the lake, you are improving freshwater flows to agriculture, you are increasing the ability of tourism to go onto the lakes and the wetlands. You are increasing, if you are rebuilding forests, you are increasing the amount of wood that is available or the amount of non-timber forest products that are available that can be harvested and sold in the international marketplace. So you're increasing business opportunity. You're increasing these things, you're increasing your assets. Why aren't you paying anyone to increase those assets? Why must you wait for nature to work against you poor thing, when you are busy destroying forests and filling up wetlands, not you in Peru, but I'm saying people generally. So the whole point is you can pay people to build ecological infrastructure, like forests and wetlands and lakes, just like you can pay people to build physical infrastructure, like railroads and dams and bridges.
So at the same time that the government is paying to people who help conserve the resources, it's saving money at the long term.